Welcome back. You're still watching Daybreak on this 7th day of February 2023, and I'm here in studio with parliamentarians, but now also being joined by the Governor of Kakamega, Fernandez Baraza. Good morning, Governor.
Yeah, morning to you. How are you?
We're great, and thank you for joining us for this conversation. We had been talking about the state of education in the regions. The parliamentarians here have had a say on that. And I now want us to transition to talk about the situation that is going on the demand for more resources. And the government has been talking about taxation. Everyone has to pay tax. On the front page of the Standard, you'll see that tax wars escalate as MP orders Treasury for records. I want us to listen to the voice of Kimani Ichung'wah, the leader of majority, who spoke yesterday in regards to demand from the National Treasury to release information about waivers that may have occurred over the past 4 or 5 years. Watch.
We have a record already of tax waivers that had been sent between 2012 and I think 2017. And that is why we're asking for the record from 2018 to date. And to date means both under the handshake regime and under the William Ruto regime. Therefore, let nobody be mistaken that this is targeting anybody. Even if there is a waiver granted to anybody under this regime in the last few months that this government has been in office, we expect that information to be available to the House.
All right, and Governor, let me begin with you, because this has generated quite a bit of heat, and you've even seen the former First Lady, Mama Ngina Kenyatta, speaking to it and saying that there's no need of politicking around this issue, that if anyone has information, their taxes she may not have paid, she be taken to court. I mean, at what point does the country stop the politicking and focus on the real issues? Do you think there's a genuine concern about waivers and what that may have cost the economy?
First and foremost, I want to confirm that the issues of waivers, it's actually the powers given to the Commission of Income Tax. And for me, we should not politicize the matter. It is not new for the country to have some waivers on tax issues. I think what I'm seeing is a situation where we're trying to politicize the tax waivers. So what I just want to appeal to all the actors is that let us look at all the provisions in the tax laws and then we comply, but not politicizing the fact, because you can clearly see there's a bit of politics that is coming out, which is not very good for us.
And Governor, therefore, if indeed such information is supplied and the new administration is of a different opinion that certain waivers should not have been given, is it fair to demand? Is it legal?
Well, every regime has its own economic blueprint. So if the Kenya Kwanza regime is proposing to waive the tax exemptions or waivers, then it is within their right, because that is what they have with the economic transformation. I know right now there's a lot of push to increase the tax collections, and it's within their powers to propose any tax amendments to the Income Tax Act and any other relevant taxes. So where I see it, I really don't want to politicize the matter, but let us follow the law. If we have tax waivers we have been given, and the government feels that we should not have tax waivers, it is within the right of the government to implement the economic policy on tax collection. As you're aware, there's a lot of pressure, especially even from the counties, on matters tax collection, and therefore it is within the right of the current regime. I'd propose any tax administration activities which they feel they're going to increase the tax collection. So I really don't want to delve with the details, the measures and whatever. But whatever it is done, especially regarding the waivers, let it be done in accordance with the law.
Okay, all right. And Senator, when you listen to what has been going on, especially in the political circles, I mean, where do you draw the line so that the country is not, or the citizens are not thinking this is just political vendetta, but it's more of doing what is supposed to be done in a proper manner.
Thank you, Sam. I just want to pick it from where Governor Baraza ended, in the context of why are we talking about tax at this point in time. This is a new government that came into office barely 5 months ago. It has its own manifesto. It has got its own policy statements on how to go about the mandate of the government. It has its own economic blueprint. Remember, for a very long time, Sam, we've been talking about the ability of this country to manage its resources and also to manage, especially, its tax base as well as the debt portfolio. And developed countries and economies have largely depended on tax collection from its citizens. And that is the basis why this conversation is now on the top of everybody, especially now, not necessarily the political class, but the leadership. I want to put it in context because it takes a leader, it takes someone to give a lead, to give direction on how things and how some certain policies are to be implemented. This conversation began on the basis of we want to reduce on our debt base. We want to reduce the debt that we have as a country. If we are collecting 2 trillion and we have 1.4 trillion going to repay the debt, remaining with only 600, remittances to the counties is at 300 billion. At the end of the day, we have got nothing remaining for purposes of paying the recurrent or even for purposes of development. That is why we are saying, why can't we be self-reliant? If every Kenyan pay his or her taxes as and when they are due, we would be having a different conversation. The unfortunate thing is, when someone leads on this conversation, which is very healthy, by the way, it is politicized for purposes of political expediency. This conversation began in a very objective way. The tangent that turned it to be political is when people now begin to say, we got a waiver or we didn't get, and therefore you seem to be targeting me. Because I believe the idea would have been, if we have agreed, and that is actually what the president said, we are not in dispute. No one is disputing the fact that we can only make it when we all pay taxes, when we do not evade, when we do not avoid, although avoiding of payment of tax is legal anyway. But the issue is, can we encourage all the Kenyans to pay taxes so that we can finance our economy and by extension reduce on our borrowing? We have gone beyond the ceiling of the government's ability to borrow. All that we are collecting at the end of the day.
Have we? I thought the ceiling is at 10 trillion now.
I mean, that is not healthy. It was approved, yes, by the parliament, but that is not healthy. Okay. If some, as I've said, the statistics, if you're collecting 2 and you're paying out 1.4, you have not developed, you have not paid your recurrent, you have not remitted to the counties. We are doing badly. And that is why the conversation, if allowed to continue, is let us do it as Kenyans pay taxes. And it is not compulsory, it's not really compulsory, lack of a better term. No one has denied that I am under an obligation to pay taxes.
Okay, all right. Honorable Martha, is it possible that an exemption or a waiver that was legal in 2018 is not legal in 2023?
I think my take, Sam, will be that anything that was given at whatever time can be reversed. And that is why I said law is made for man. Man is not made for the law. It is possible to reverse for a reason, because if you look at the clamor even the governors have today, Treasury has proposed that it will give them 385 billion. They want 425 billion. CDF, we just wanted a mere 4 billion, which was not easy to get. We have not even gotten, I think, 50%.
This week we have gotten.
Yeah, we have gotten nothing, and yet we are almost closing financial year. So in terms of the need for money, it is there. And I think not many members, even yourself, Sam, you don't have a say if you get a waiver yourself. You will pay taxes, whether you like it or not. And I think that is what we are talking about, even biblically. Jesus told them, give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. It is not a very happy moment to pay taxes. Even us, we do not like it. But if we are going to have these monies that we are asking for, where does it come from? And I think for Kenya Kwanza, the president has been very clear that we want to reduce the amount of borrowing we are doing. If you don't have domestic generation of that income, then how do you bridge that gap? I think for me, what is important is that and what is coming out is that when we say waivers, there are already people reacting to it. So unless you're in the waivers bracket, then you have no business. The people then who are talking then have something to protect, because I would not talk to it because I have no waiver. But for me, I would also want us to talk international waivers. For even businesses that have been given waivers that are international and are foreign, let also scrutinize not just local, but also the foreign, unless there is the principle of reciprocity with those countries. And I say that because I remember, like, when I sat in delegated legislation last parliament, there was one, I think, for Japan. If they do the same to us as a country, then we can reciprocate. But let us not just focus, because we want to generate monies. So even foreign companies that are operating in this country, unless we are getting an equal deal in their country, they should pay taxes. And I think that is the basic, because the normal hustlers we are talking about pay taxes whether you like it or not, even yourself and myself. So even these people who are in this bracket, they should not be worried for that bracket to be open. And I think for Parliament, they have the leeway under Article 125 of the Constitution to ask for any information, and also under that Article 35, because we represent the people and that power is donated via the Constitution. So let us not bring like it's a bigger issue than it is. Let that information come to Parliament. Let it be public information if need be, but let people know that paying taxes is not optional. And if you're not in that bracket, you really have no business weighing into this debate.
Very interesting. Honorable Ngui, but then again, because we live in a political country, and even as the governor is saying that there's been a lot of infusion of politics into it, how do we do this? Because the person demanding this information is Kimani Ichung'wah, leader of majority. He's been very clear on his position about those waivers. He has spoken about even the former president. So how do you make it tidy to an extent that Kenyans will feel that this was fair administration of whatever is going on and not politicization of the past?
You know, just like the governor said, we are not supposed to politicize this issue. Paying tax, I think, is an obligation of every citizen, because this country cannot move to the next level unless or until everyone pays taxes. The only thing we need to look into is to scrutinize. For example, if we talk of industries, foreign investors in some countries are given tax holidays. And the reason is when they invest here, they generate the economy, they create employment. And once you create employment, you open the tax base. Many people can pay taxes. So these are the kind of things we need to look into. The other thing is, as we talk of taxes, let's look also in terms of tariffs. Now, the tariffs for Kenya Power have gone up. What does that mean? High cost of living and scaring our investors. So we need to look at our policies such that we create an enabling environment for investors to come. And also, when you talk of taxes, let every citizen pay taxes. Apart from exception, for example, people with disabilities. These people have been exempted from paying tax, and I think that position should remain, because these are among the people who are extremely suffering. But now, when you talk of the rich, people with the means in all facets, these people should pay taxes. Let's not have sacred people who are not supposed to pay taxes when others are burdened with the taxes. So these are some of the things we need to look to. Additionally, the current government, as it also looks into taxes, let's try to fix issues of corruption. Okay. Because you could be taxing Kenyans, and then the money goes to some people's pockets. So corruption has remained a big issue in this country. And if you look at borrowing is not a problem. We talk of Japan, the debt ratio to the GDP in Japan stands at almost 200%. If you talk of United States, the debt ratio to the GDP stands at 100%. And is actually, they project for it to go up. But when they borrow the money doesn't go to people's pocket. But if you look at our country, corruption, if it is some investment, let's say we borrow to do development, you find that people are cutting deals. And these are the things that our country needs to fix. Because taxation is one way, but then when we collect the money, how do we use the money? So these are the things which I would tax the Ministry of Planning, Treasury, to look into it. And the government needs to be extremely committed. They should lead from the front when they are talking of fighting corruption.
Okay, no, all right, I hear you. We'll continue to watch what happens and what action